At number 43 on the Iconic 100 list is the Nolan Ryan 1968 Topps rookie card. And here to talk about it, we've brought back Cage from the Luca Tigers Bronze podcast. What do you think? I know this is one of the most iconic cards from the 60s in baseball. What do you think about where it shows up at number 43 on the list?
So where did I put it?
Well, you put it, I'll say I put it at number 27, and you put it at number 31. So we were both higher on it than the whole
Yeah,
thing.
so a little bit. I mean, to me, if you are somebody who collected baseball cards in the 80s like I did, right, you got into the folks who are, currently playing. I previously talked about the Mark McGwire Olympic team card from 1985 on a prior one of these, and, talk about other cards that you collected. But basically the only pitcher who was relevant among the top guys for a while, right, was Nolan Ryan. When you talk about the cards people were collecting, it was Nolan Ryan, which is amazing because it takes a little while. You have to be collecting for more than a minute, right? And you say, all right, well, he's the best pitcher. Let me go back and get his rookie card. All right, well, I went back to 1980 and I got a Ricky Henderson. That's old. All right, I happen to like, Andre Dawson, or, I like Ozzie Smith in the 70s. I have to go back to the 60s. That's vintage. I remember being a 12-year-old kid saying, I can't go back that far. Like, I don't need a card from the 60s. That's for my dad to collect, But everybody looked for that card in the 80s, early 90s, because Ryan, he spanned the generations. I mean, he played for the Mets in the 60s, that 69 Mets team, and then was famously traded away from the Mets, starting the Mets misery, right? And, he was everywhere. Ryan was iconic. I mean, this guy pitched well into his 40s, had an amazing ad campaign for Advil, because here he is throwing 100 miles an hour at 40-something years old, and he was doing Advil commercials. I remember it to this day. And I'm like, of course, he needs them. He's as old as my grandpa. He's 40. Look at me now, right?
I was in elementary school in the late 80s and early 90s. And Cage, I remember, Nolan Ryan was this this person that we didn't really watch the games, we didn't really know, but everybody knew who Nolan Ryan was.
Oh, everyone.
Everybody knew he played forever. Everybody felt like he was going to play forever. He was never going to end. And I think, Nolan Ryan's his image grew to the point where he was not only on commercials and these sort of things you're talking about. I even remember that this specific card was on a sitcom in the 90s. If I remember right, it might have been Full House. It might have been another one, but I remember specifically this card being traded on a TV show. And I think, if we look back, perhaps there's no way to recognize how iconic a card is more than it's sort of entering pop culture and having references to the card in movies and in TV shows and things like that. And this is one of the few cards that I think did that.
100%. I mean, I think you're 100% right. I mean, if you collected in the 80s and 90s, you knew what this card looked like. You're old like me. Sometimes you forget things. But this was a card everyone knew. And Ryan, you're right. He was everywhere and everyone knew him. And even though he was towards the end of his career, he was still doing things no one else was doing. He had 7 no-hitters. I remember they had to make cards for him. I remember they made a card for his 6 no-hitter. And you're like, wow, this is a cool commemorative card because he's going to retire with 6 no-hitters. And then he has a 7th. And you're like, what? They got to make another card. The 6 on one side, 7 on the back.
I remember the exact same thing, like no-hitters and all the records. It seemed like every day we were getting another record. But I've got a question for you about this card that I think pertains to this and maybe a couple of other cards on the list. Mm-hmm. The thing about this card is this isn't just Nolan Ryan on his own. You got to call to the fact that you've got somebody else there, Jerry Koosman, on the card. And I wonder, in retrospect, if these cards that they included in the world of baseball, especially, that feature other athletes, I wonder if that brings them down a bit. If this card might even be higher if Nolan had been on his own. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. Depends on where you stand, right? So someone like me, I'm used to those cards because in the 80s there were, multi-picture cards, right? I mean, one of the more iconic ones out there, Magic and Bird and Julius Erving scoring leader card, right? In 1982, I can't tell you the other 2 guys on the Cal Ripken rookie card. but there's 3 guys pictured in it. It's just something that they did. Obviously, with 792 card top sets, they still needed to put multiple people on the cards, which is amazing to think about. I remember 81 tops. Fernando Valenzuela was on especially rookies, right? Because you never knew which one of the rookies was going to be the one that turned into something, right? And Kuzma was a good pitcher in his own right, but he was not Nolan Ryan. Nobody was. So I understand why they did it. I've definitely had that conversation with folks about like, hey, I'd rather have him stand alone and let me get the 69, copy of him, where it's a rookie in and of himself. It's just what they were doing at the time. To me, value wise, there are a few cards that are more valuable in the second year card. I'll give you one great example right from the same vicinity in time. Thurman Munson.
Yep.
Everybody knows the black border one that has his rookie. It's not a cup, but it's got the rookie trophy in it, right? Where he's got the rookie of the year trophy, and he's at the plate, he's tagging somebody out, and everybody knows that card, and it's real condition sensitive and expensive because of it. But people don't realize that there is a card in 70 the year before with him and another player on it, which is his actual rookie card, but much less desirable. So I know what you're saying.
To that point, we didn't even put his Thurman Munson's rookie card on the 215 cards to choose from. It's really hard to create a list of like all the cards to choose from to figure out the most iconic 100. But we did actually put the next year the black border card on the list because it's so recognizable. This is what we're talking about when we talk about iconic. Some people think of iconic and they think it's synonymous with like most valuable. It's not, right? It's most recognizable. It's most important. It's most iconic. It's it has its own definition. And as you pointed out in a previous episode, I think people have different definitions.
100%. I'm with you though. Value, not iconic is. So what's funny is valuable. It also depends on kind of like your generation, believe it or not, right? Mm-hmm. And something can be quote iconic to a specific generation. This Nolan Ryan might be more iconic to someone like me or you because we know it, we watched him pitch, than to someone who's now growing up and collecting in the ultra modern shiny. If you look at this, it's boring. It's you name it. I think the truly iconic cards, and eventually you'll get to them on your list, are the ones that are known and loved by multiple generations of card collectors.
Yeah, but this one's verging on that, I think, because you and I, 27, 31. I think I would have preferred to see this one a little bit higher. It's one of those ones that in the baseball world I look at and I go, that card is important. It's really one of the cards post Mantle. It's really one of the cards of that couple of decades that stands out. And
100%.
So, and that's really the golden age of card collecting for a lot of people. And so I look at this, I would have liked to see it a little bit higher, but again, it comes in at number 43 on the Iconic 100 list. Tomorrow, we'll be back with card number 42. Thanks again, Cage. Until next time, happy collecting.